Guys, welcome into my way too early top 20 bold predictions for 2023 college football with us entering the dead of winter. I thought I would get these out here in January, and I do think all of these have at least a decent chance of happening. Some are a little less bold than others. I'm sure people will be able to see based on the prediction. But let's go through some initial thoughts for 2023, starting with LSU being the most overrated team. Guys, LSU, I see them and FSU as the two main teams that are getting a ton of preseason hype, and I understand it with Florida State. I really don't get it with LSU. I realize the returning quarterback, but just in general, looking at their schedule, you've got a neutral site game with Florida State. You go on the road to Bama. It's just not easy. So in the SEC, I could see LSU losing 4 games this coming year, which in terms of a top 10 preseason team would be a lot. They just strike me as a little overrated. Harold Perkins, certainly a beast on defense. I get it. But they would be my most overrated team based on, I even saw someone did an article saying bet on LSU in a futures bet to win the national title at plus whatever it was, 50-1 or something. Number 2, Alabama back to the playoff. So this is not very bold at all. Alabama, no matter who their quarterback is, there's an expectation with Nick Saban. As crazy as it sounds, he hasn't won the title in 2 straight years. Normally, history tells us he goes on an absolute warpath that 3rd year. And of course, it doesn't hurt Alabama. Their recruiting was so elite. Well, the past 3 seasons, he's actually gotten it to another level. So they're going to have all of that talent on their roster, use the portal to fill needs. Of course, you would expect them to have multiple top receivers after the situation they just experienced where their season was basically ruined by not having a true number 1 receiver. We'll see who steps up for them, but you have to have faith in Nick Saban at this point after all he's done for Alabama to at least get back to the playoff, even in a tough SEC. Number 3, the dark horse Heisman is Braylon Allen, the running back for Wisconsin. So just looking at the overall Heisman odds, I was struck at how low Braylon Allen was. This was a kid that was amazing as a true freshman. Last year, it seemed like no one on Wisconsin was any good. They fired their head coach midseason. Braylon Allen, there's transfer portal rumors left and right. He announces he's staying. I am so high on Wisconsin football next year, what they've done in the portal. They're going to actually have a passing attack. So I think Braylon Allen right now is a really underrated player in terms of a potential Heisman, and he's going to run through the Big Ten West, have a ton of yards. We know Wisconsin running backs tend to do that. So I like Braylon Allen possibly making it, at least to the Heisman ceremony and finishing top 3. Number 4, the Pac-12 eats itself again. So the Pac-12, you've got Washington with a returning quarterback. You've got Oregon with a returning quarterback. You've got Utah with a returning quarterback. You've got USC with a returning Heisman quarterback. Guys, the moral of the story here, the Pac-12 is going to be really good, but they're all going to face each other, and they're all going to beat each other. So I could see a situation where you have, Oregon's a top 10 team, USC's a top 10 team, Washington is a top 10 team, but no one makes the playoff because they all eat each other and they all beat each other based on everyone, all of the quarterbacks that are returning. There's a lot of experience in that conference going into 2023. Number 5, Ohio State beats Michigan. So Ryan Day, it's real dicey here going on the road into Ann Arbor with J.J. McCarthy back, with Donovan Edwards back, with Blake Corum now shockingly returning to Michigan. Ryan Day is on the verge of falling to 1-3 against, Michigan, and if he does that, there's speculation, will he get fired? Personally, I think if Ryan Day, even if he loses to Michigan, not knowing the context, I still think he'll probably be back at Ohio State because of the 12-team playoff expansion. The Ohio State-Michigan game will be a lot less impactful in terms of your overall success. But I think, Ryan Day has got to win this game. It's going to be hard. They might even be underdogs. Maybe it's better if they're underdogs, considering they've been 10-point favorites the past 2 years and have completely gotten blown out. But I do think Ohio State goes on the road. Again, this is a way too early prediction. We don't know what those rosters are really going to be. We do know that Ohio State has quarterback question marks, but based on Ryan Day's resume and his history, either Devin Brown or Kyle McCord, whoever it is, they're probably going to be at least in the Heisman conversation because he knows how to develop quarterbacks. And you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got Emeka Egbuka, you still probably have Julian Fleming as long as he doesn't enter the portal, and a really loaded running back room. I know the offensive line's a big issue, but I think Ohio State and Ryan Day avoid that 1-3 record against Michigan. Number 6, Georgia misses the playoff. Carson Beck gets replaced. So there's already rumors that Kirby Smart, based off of the success that Stetson Bennett's had as a dual threat quarterback, that Kirby Smart says, listen, we want a dual threat guy. That's not really what Carson Beck is. Now, the thought process is Carson Beck is the next man up at Georgia. We saw him come in there, in the fourth quarter against TCU. He kind of looked like a nutcracker or something it was kind of weird, but I think Carson Beck ends up getting replaced and Georgia misses the playoff. Listen, there's no way. They can't go back to back to back. It seems impossible, but I will be honest, I did not think they were going to repeat, and we know, the game against Ohio State and that whole thing. I'm not going to get into it, but the next, we've got Texas A&M going 9-4, having a good season, and getting a ton of hype for 2024. So Texas A&M is going to really not get talked about at all this offseason. They're not going to be a preseason top 25 team, I wouldn't think. If they are, they'd be ranked low. And I think they're going to fly under the radar, but they still have a lot of talent on that roster, and a lot of these young guys are going to be sophomores, and if they go 9-4 and finish the season strong, they will be the media offseason darling next year. If they finish 9-4, they finished ranked, they finish with a bowl win, they're going to get more experience. A lot of those sophomores are going to be juniors in 2024, and that will be their window. In my opinion, I think Texas A&M, maybe a little undervalued, people overreacting to the horrible season they had with a bunch of true freshmen there. Next, we have Penn State going 1-1 versus Michigan and Ohio State. So they get Michigan at home, and they're on the road in Columbus. I don't know which game they'll win and which game they'll lose, but I think they win one of those games. Penn State, they went 0-2 against Michigan. Ohio State beat everyone else on their schedule. Now I think they go 1-1 and are in contention for the Big Ten championship, depending on tiebreakers and maybe even in the playoff. Penn State trying to get to the playoff for their first time, and they certainly have the overall talent. We will see what they do, but a lot of people really high on Penn State. They've actually gotten some hype. It's really Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, 3 teams possibly in the top 6. That's how crazy top-heavy the Big Ten is. And then the one other team I would say in the Big Ten, I love Wisconsin. I do like Wisconsin a lot next year. USC is the same team as 2022. So, USC has done some things. They've tried to improve their defense in the portal. I don't think it's going to be enough. I still think the defense is going to lag behind. When you add on all of those Pac-12 teams returning their quarterbacks, USC is still going to be bad on defense because it's a tough conference, and for as good as a QB as Caleb Williams is, USC is losing several receivers to the portal. They're getting desperate. They're doing horrible things like tampering and trying to offer Marvin Harrison Jr. upwards of $2 million. It's completely illegal and totally disgusting. But yeah, guys, USC's going to have a good offense because it's Lincoln Riley. It's just the defense, in my opinion, is still not going to be good enough. But I do still think they have Corey Foreman. Maybe he steps up and becomes a superstar, the former number 1 overall player in the country back in, I think, 2021 maybe. Number 10, Pittsburgh goes 5-7, misses bowl. I'm not seeing it with Pittsburgh, guys. I've seen a lot of people rank them inside the way too early top 25 when we all released them. I said, listen, I'm not putting Pittsburgh anywhere near mine. And it's like they're basing it off of that fluky comeback against UCLA when they had a 2% chance to win late in the third quarter with a backup quarterback. I am not buying it. They lose their starter to the portal. I think Pittsburgh takes a step back in the ACC, and they really struggle. Even though the ACC isn't that great, you still have FSU, Clemson. Miami still has the talent overall. NC State's never a pushover, especially when you're on the road. Louisville should be good with Jeff Brom. So I could see Pittsburgh taking a step back in 2023. Kind of a random thing to throw in there. I don't know why I'm picking on Pittsburgh there, but I just threw that in there. Number 11, Oklahoma makes a New Year's Six Bowl with Dillon Gabriel back. Folks, Oklahoma is the greatest 6-7 team ever. They played FSU down to the wire in the bowl game. We know how good FSU was at the end of the year with Jordan Travis. This Oklahoma team is being overlooked. People aren't realizing it. They were number 18 on my way too early preseason top 25. They've got the talent. They've got the recruiting. They've got the veteran leadership at the quarterback position. They will be much improved in 2023. Number 12, Wisconsin is by far the best team in the Big Ten West, and I think at some point during the season, they're inside of the top 10 in the AP poll. They've brought in multiple quarterbacks that can get the job done. Tanner Mordecai, veteran leader. You know, the running back situation, we talked about Braylon Allen. They always have a good defense. They get Ohio State at home, and they've got that cream puff Big Ten West schedule with Minnesota getting worse, with Purdue really nowhere to be found at this point, although they did get Hudson Card. You know, it's wide open right now. Iowa still has offensive problems. I think they lose Jack Campbell, Riley Moss. I like this Wisconsin team a lot, and I think they possibly could be a top 10 team, maybe a New Year's Six team from the Big Ten. Number 13, Notre Dame gets screwed by the schedule. So, guys, I've been doing these way too early schedule look-aheads, and I did Notre Dame a few days ago, and I was appalled at what I saw. I mean, it's such a tough schedule. I respect Notre Dame for doing it, but I think it's Ohio State, Clemson, USC. There's might be like one or two other games that are going to be tough for them. They're going to have a good season, but I mean, I feel like their potential, their absolute ceiling, based on how hard the schedule is 10-2. And obviously, if you're 10-2, we still have the 4-team playoff. You have no conference championship. You're an independent. You're not getting into the playoff. So Notre Dame, they're going to be really good with Sam Hartman. It's a developing defense. I'm a huge believer in Marcus Freeman, but the schedule is just so tough for them. Number 14, Drake May flops. Similar to Justin Herbert in his senior season at Oregon. So some people may not remember this, but Justin Herbert as a senior really didn't live up to the hype. He still ends up going 6th overall to the Chargers, and the rest is history. He's turning into a franchise quarterback. I think the same thing's going to happen with Drake May. I'm not seeing the weapons in terms of, receivers for North Carolina, for Drake May. I think he underwhelms. He's not going to be anywhere close to the Heisman. UNC ends up 7-5, maybe 6-6 in a watered-down ACC because they still have a horrible defense, and they really didn't do that good of a job in the portal, at least the first window of the portal. We'll see what they do in the spring. But Drake May, I think the NFL still says, listen, he's got no help. Josh Downs is already gone. We're still going to draft Drake May inside the top 10, just like they did with Justin Herbert when he had a bad year at Oregon because of his talent. So that's what I think happens with Drake May. Number 15, Florida State goes 12-1. They make the playoff as the 3 seed, so this would be Florida State's second playoff appearance after making the first ever playoff. I'm just buying in. They're returning everyone. There's players that were going to be first-round picks. A pass rusher, Jared Verse, who's coming back. Jordan Travis is a Heisman hopeful. He's had such a great development throughout his career, and he is really good. So this Florida State team, I love what they're building there, and I do think they finally break through this year after building doing great things in the portal, returning all their players. This is really their year to do it. And I know people are going to say, oh, they're overhyped and stuff like that. I was really the first one to get in on FSU last year midseason when I said they were way better than their record. I was the first one to get in on them. So I'm sticking by them. And now it's kind of like a trendy thing. Oh, everyone's picking FSU to the playoff, when really I was the first person to say it. But either way, I think FSU does make the playoff this year. Iowa inside the top 15 at some point. This is just how Iowa football works. They'll have a few years where they're terrible, they underperform, and then one year, randomly, they'll start 6-0 and they'll be inside the top 15. So Iowa, Cade McNamara, the transfer QB from Michigan. They got Eric All as well. Maybe they get a little bit better on offense, but I just think this is kind of how Iowa football operates. They'll finish with a 9-3 record in a watered-down Big Ten West. That's just my opinion there. Number 17, Clemson defense takes a step back. I think we're going to see a big difference with Clemson football. They're going to be a lot better on offense with Cade Klubnik, more experience, bringing in the Riley, the offensive coordinator from TCU, the number one coordinator in the country. Great job by Dabo. But the defense, Clemson has not recruited well enough to be able to replace the amount of talent they're losing, including 3 5-stars, 2 5-star pass rushers, all off to the NFL, possibly 3 first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball leaving to the NFL. And Clemson has really struggled during the NIL era to recruit at the level they were recruiting at in 2018, 2019, and 2020. It's going to start to hurt them, but I do think their offense will be better. They will have a much better offense and a pretty significantly worse defense there. Number 18, Kansas State goes 7-5. Is Oklahoma State 2.0? Guys, so last year during the preseason, I said, listen, I know Oklahoma State had a great year the year before. Remember, they beat Notre Dame in that comeback in the New Year's Six Bowl. But I said this Oklahoma State team is not going to be good. I don't know why people are ranking them inside their top 15. And Oklahoma State was a disaster. I called it. And now it's the same thing with Kansas State. People are going to rank them high because as a respect thing, but they lose everyone. And you're in a conference where there's a lot of parity. I could see Kansas State going 7-5. It's nothing against them as a program. It's just based off of how much they lose, and people are going to overrank them based on their previous year. They will not be able to replace the talent that they lost. They're a rebuild program, not a reload. They rebuild, they don't reload because they don't recruit well enough. Number 19, TC. This is not a bold prediction. You know what? I think this already happened. TCU comes down to earth. So, I have nothing against TCU as a program. I think everyone is a little disappointed, though. Losing 65-7, that is literally an FCS score. Literally. So, obviously it's just not a good look for college football. My opinion, Sonny Dykes is a good coach for sure. TCU had a crazy breakthrough, making it all the way to the national title, beating Michigan. But you're looking at 8 wins next year, 8-5 type year there for them. And then 20, I'm going to say Washington is a disappointment. I just don't think they have the defense in terms of how much they've improved. They do have a relatively easy schedule. I will say, I just looked at their schedule, did a video on it in terms of my way too early look ahead. They were one of the teams I featured, I think, today. And it is a relatively easy schedule, but still, when you're talking about the conference, the Pac-12, facing Utah, facing USC, facing Oregon, it's very hard, and I just don't think they've improved enough on the defensive side of the ball to be a playoff type team, because I see people ranking Washington as high as number 6, number 7, things like that. They're inside a lot of people's top 10s, so I would say they're a little bit of a disappointment, but that is just my way too early top 20 bold predictions for college football 2023. Guys, make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.